I'm Will from the Tulsa City County Library, Martin Branch, with the fourth and final of our Teen Terror Tales for the month of October. I will be reading a tale every Wednesday, and the adult librarian, Ben Drake Wilcox, will read one every Friday. Now, most of these short stories are old because they are out of copyright and free for the library system to use. You may find the language a little stilted. If you find a word or two you don't understand, I recommend that you just let it go and you'll pick up the meaning in a line or two. Now, this is the final chapter of our Teen Terror Tales, and I like to think I saved the best for last. The story of the Croglin Grange vampire is buried in a thick Victorian autobiography called Stories of My Life, but it is not a short story. It is a legend. You might call it an urban legend. People believe this really happened in Cumberland in northwest England. It is a vampire legend, the only vampire legend in all England. It was published before Dracula came out in 1897, when many English speakers had not even heard of a vampire, and yet it has all the details that we like so much. This is a short tale, so afterwards I'll talk about the investigations that came later into the mysterious Croglin Grange vampire. Fisher, said the captain, may sound a very plebeian name, but this family is of a very ancient lineage, and for many hundreds of years they have possessed a very curious old place in Cumberland, which bears the weird name of Croglin Grange. The great characteristic of the house is that never at any period of its long existence has it been more than 1 story high. But it has a terrace from which large grounds sweep away toward the church in the hollow and a fine distant view. When, in lapse of years, the Fishers outgrew Croglin Grange in family and fortune, they were wise enough not to destroy the old long-standing characteristics of the old place by adding another story to the house, but they went away to the south to reside at Thorncroft near Guildford, and then rented Croglin Grange. They were extremely fortunate in their tenants, 2 brothers and a sister. They heard their praises from all quarters. To their poorer neighbors, they were all that is most kind and beneficent, and their neighbors of a higher class spoke of them as a most welcome addition to the little society of the neighborhood. On their part, the tenants were greatly delighted with their new residence. The arrangement of the house, which would have been a trial to many, were not so to them. In every respect, Croglin Grange was exactly suited to them. The winter was spent most happily by the new inmates of Croglin Grange, who shared in all the little social pleasures of the district and made themselves very popular. In the following summer, there was one day that was dreadfully, annihilatingly hot. The brothers lay under the tree with their books, for it was too hot for any active occupation. The sister sat on the veranda and worked, or tried to work, for in the intense sultriness of that summer, work was next to impossible. They dined early, and after dinner they still sat out on the veranda, enjoying the cool air that came with the evening, and they watched the sun set and the moon rise over the belt of trees that separated the grounds from the churchyard, seeing it mount the heavens till the whole lawn was bathed in silver moonlight, after which the long shadows from the shrubbery fell as if embossed, so vivid and distinct they were. When they separated for the night, all retiring to their rooms on the ground floor, for as I said, there was no upstairs in this house, the sister felt that the heat was still so great that she could not sleep, and having fastened her window, she did not close the shutters. In that very quiet place it was not necessary. And, propped against the pillows, she still watched the wonderful, the marvelous beauty of that summer night. Gradually she became aware of 2 lights that flickered in and out of the belt of trees that separated the lawn from the churchyard, and as her gaze became fixed upon them, she saw them emerge, fixed in a dark substance, a definite ghostly something, which seemed every moment to becoming nearer and nearer, increase in size and substance as it approached. Every now and then it was lost for a moment in the long shadows that stretched across the lawn from the trees, and then it emerged, larger than ever, and still coming on. As she watched it, the most uncontrollable horror seized her. She longed to get away, but the door was close to the window, and the door was locked on the inside, and while she was unlocking it, she might, for an instant, be nearer to it. She longed to scream, but her voice seemed paralyzed, her tongue glued to the roof of her mouth. Suddenly, she could not explain why afterwards, the terrible object seemed to turn to one side, seemed to be going round the house, not to be coming to her at all, and immediately she jumped out of bed and rushed to the door, but as she was unlocking it, she heard a scratch, scratch, scratch upon the window. She felt a sort of mental comfort in the knowledge that the window was securely fastened on the inside. But suddenly the scratching sound ceased and a kind of pecking sound took its place. Then, in her agony, she became aware that the creature was unpicking the lead on the windows. The noise continued and a diamond pane of glass fell into the room. Then a long, bony finger of the creature came in and turned the handle of the window, and the window opened and the creature came in. And it came across the room, and her terror was so great that she could not scream, and it came up to her bed. And it twisted its long, bony fingers into her hair, and it dragged her head over to the side, and it bit her violently on the throat. As it bit her, her voice was released, and she screamed with all her might and main. Her brothers rushed out of their rooms, but the door was locked on the inside. A moment was lost while they got a poker and broke it open. The creature had already escaped through the window, and the sister, bleeding violently from a wound in the throat, was lying unconscious over the side of the bed. One brother pursued the creature, which fled before him through the moonlight with gigantic strides and eventually seemed to disappear over the wall into the churchyard. Then he rejoined his brother by the sister's bedside. She was dreadfully hurt, and her wound was a very definite one, but she was of strong disposition, not ever given to romance or superstition, and when she came to herself, she said, "What has happened is most extraordinary, and I'm very much hurt. It seems inexplicable, but of course there is an explanation, and we must wait for it. It will turn out that a lunatic has escaped from some asylum and has found his way here." The wound healed, and she appeared to be getting well, but the doctor who was sent would not believe that she could bear so terribly a shock so easily, and insisted that she must have change, mental and physical change, so her brothers took her to Switzerland. Now, being a sensible girl, when she went abroad, she threw herself at once into the interests of the country she was in. She dried plants, she made sketches, she went up mountains, and as autumn came on, she was the person who urged that they should return to Croglin Grange. "We've taken it," she said, "for 7 years, and have only been there 1, and we shall always find it difficult to let a house which is only 1 story high, so we had better return to it. Lunatics do not escape every day." As she urged it, her brothers wished nothing better, and the family returned to Cumberland. From there, being no upstairs in the house, it was impossible to make any great change in their arrangements. The sister occupied the same room, but it is unnecessary to say she always closed the shutters, which, however, as it is in many houses, always left one top pane of the window uncovered. The brothers moved and occupied a room together, exactly opposite that of their sister, and they always kept loaded pistols in their room. The winter passed most peacefully and happily. In the following March, the sister was suddenly awakened by a sound she remembered only too well. A scratch, scratch, scratch upon the window. And looking up, she saw, climbing up to the topmost pane of the window, the same hideous, brown, shriveled face with glaring eyes looking in at her. This time she screamed as loud as she could. Her brothers rushed out of the room with pistols and out the front door. The creature was already scudding away across the lawn. One of the brothers fired and hit it in the leg, but still with the other leg it continued to make way, scrambling over the wall into the churchyard, and seemed to disappear into the vault that belonged to a family long extinct. The next day, the brothers summoned all the tenants of Croglin Grange, and in their presence the vault was opened. A horrible scene revealed itself. The vault was full of coffins. They had been broken open, and their contents, horribly mangled and distorted, were scattered over the floor. One coffin alone remained intact. Of that, the lid had been lifted, but still lay loose upon the coffin. They raised it, and there, brown, withered, shriveled, mummified, but quite entire, was the same hideous figure that had looked in at the windows of Croglin Grange, with the marks of a recent pistol shot in the leg. And they did the only thing that can lay a vampire. They burnt it. Now, in 1924, Charles Harper, an investigator into unusual fairy tales and things like that, decided to make a journey to Cumberland to investigate this, see if he could find something that was named Croglin Grange. And it's an unusual name, and he was able to find two buildings, very interesting. One was Croglin Low Hall, and the other was called Croglin High Hall, which corresponds completely to the one-story residence that the family was staying in, and the second one that the original family moved to. And they hunted around looking for a churchyard, and sure enough, there was one fairly close to the house. And they looked for a family named Fisher, and they definitely found Fishers in the vicinity, although it's a very common name. But the main thing was that everyone in the area was familiar with the story, and they had been taught it by their parents and their grandparents for many years. So as far as I'm concerned, that's proven. That's good enough for me. I hope it's good enough for you. Thank you. This is Will.